Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are wrestling with a threat that has, well, quietly moved from being just a technological curiosity to, frankly, one of the most severe global risks we're facing.
Right, that's right.
The deep fake threat
Yeah.
and its impact on trust, on democracy itself. We've collected a stack of sources looking at how this synthetic media is really changing what we believe and fundamentally how we vote.
It's a huge deal. And it's more than just a political problem. It's really a crisis of perception. We're talking about a seismic shift here. And the numbers, well, they really reflect just how quickly public anxiety has shot up. Globally, the World Economic Forum, the WEF, they recently flagged AI-driven misinformation and disinformation as one of the most severe short-term risks facing society.
Wow, short term,
Yeah.
not like decades away.
No, right now. They believe it's capable of destabilizing entire communities, eroding public confidence in, key institutions. They put it up there with risks like extreme weather and social polarization. It's that serious.
Okay, that really puts the gravity of this into sharp focus. And like you said, this isn't some distant theoretical future thing. This fear is already kind of baked into the public consciousness, isn't it?
Absolutely. There was a recent U.S. survey, and it showed a staggering 85% of respondents voicing concern about the spread of AI-created misleading video and audio.
85%, wow.
Yeah. I mean, when 4 out of 5 people are actively worried about the information they consume, that suggests the crisis of trust isn't coming. It's already here.
Right, it's landed.
Precisely. So today we're examining how these hyper-realistic technologies are threatening democratic processes worldwide. Everything from straightforward attempts at election fraud and voter suppression
Which you'll definitely get into.
to the really profound psychological fallout of living in what many people are already calling a post-truth era. The core challenge, I think, is that the technology is just outpacing our legal and social capacity to cope with it.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Our mission today is pretty comprehensive. We're going to dive into the technical origins of deepfakes first, how they even came about, then walk through some of the most alarming global case files, Brazil, Nigeria, India, the US. Then we really need to understand the core systemic threat, particularly this concept known as the liar's dividend.
Yes, that's crucial.
And finally, we'll look at the fight back, the layered regulatory, technological, and social measures currently being deployed or at least proposed to try and counter this.
And we absolutely must start, as you said, by defining our terms and understanding those technical origins, because that really explains the speed of this crisis.
Yeah.
So deepfakes, these hyper-realistic fake audio video clips, they first emerged publicly around, 2017?
Yeah, 2017. And the initial focus, you could almost call the original sin of the technology, was, well, non-consensual use. It was almost immediately weaponized for harassment, specifically targeting women.
That's right, depressingly so.
We know that by 2020, researchers estimated something like 96% of deepfake videos online were pornographic,
Yeah.
overwhelmingly targeting women without their consent. That's really how the public first became widely aware of the term.
And that initial, frankly awful use provided a lot of the funding and research momentum for the underlying technology. But the capabilities quickly evolved far beyond just malicious entertainment or harassment. The key technical shift happened when researchers really embraced these models known as generative adversarial networks, or GANs.
Okay, JANs. Could you briefly explain how a JAN kind of revolutionized this? Because this feels like it moves way beyond just simple video editing.
Absolutely. So a GAN is basically 2 dueling neural networks. You've got a generator and a discriminator. The generator's job is to create a fake image or video.
Right.
The discriminator then tries to spot that fake. They essentially train each other over and over again. The generator only really wins or succeeds when the discriminator can no longer tell the difference between the real thing and the fake.
Ah, okay. So it's like an AI arms race in miniature.
Exactly. And this rapid automated self-improvement is why deepfakes became so realistic, so incredibly quickly. What once required, specialized equipment and Hollywood-level visual effects resources, swapping faces convincingly, mimicking voices with eerie accuracy.
Yeah, stuff that costs millions.
Right. It can now be done cheaply, quickly, and at massive scale with algorithms that are publicly available, often open source, and using cloud computing resources that anyone can rent.
Yeah.
That shift in accessibility, the democratization of the tech, is the real source of the danger to democracy.
The political implications weren't immediate, maybe, but there were some chilling warning shots quite early on. I remember that 2018 viral public service video, the one where comedian Jordan Peele worked with BuzzFeed.
Oh, yeah, the Obama one.
Exactly. He impersonated President Obama using these sophisticated AI tools. It was
Yeah.
such a powerful demonstration of how easily our own eyes and ears could be deceived. It really forced us, or should have forced us, to think differently about video evidence.
That video was definitely the theoretical warning shot, the what if. But the world got a pretty painful lesson in the real-world consequence shortly after that, also in 2018, but far away from the U.S. media spotlight, in Gabon.
Gabon. Right, what happened there?
Well, rumors of a deepfake video involving Gabon's long-serving president Ali Bongo spread like wildfire. The suggestion was that he was too ill to govern, perhaps even dead, and the video supposedly showing him was fake.
So doubt about the official narrative.
Exactly. And that doubt, fueled by the possibility of a deepfake, directly contributed to an attempted military coup.
That is absolutely critical. So whether or not the video itself was technically an AI-generated deepfake wasn't even the ultimate point in that case.
Precisely. It was the perception that it could be fake. The idea that the official word, the video evidence presented by the state, was potentially unverifiable. That was enough to undermine trust in the entire government's media output and actually spark a coup attempt. Real-world instability triggered by the mere idea of fakery. That incident was a pivotal bellwether. And what's fascinating here, and frankly quite terrifying, is the profound philosophical shift it forced upon us globally. As one expert observed, when hyperrealistic fakery becomes possible, people might soon find it, and I quote, epistemically irresponsible to simply believe that what is depicted in a video actually occurred.
Epistemically irresponsible. That's heavy.
It is. The foundational idea that seeing is believing became instantly obsolete, not because everything is fake, but because theoretically everything could be fake.
That's a terrifying thought. The mere existence of the technology retroactively undermines the reliability of all media, past, present, and future. It just creates this enormous gray area of doubt.
A huge gray area.
And now we're seeing that catastrophic shift playing out actively, being weaponized in elections all around the world.
Exactly. So let's move from that theoretical threat to the actual damage that's being done right now across the globe.
Okay. Here's where we get into the nitty-gritty of the deception. The U.S. 2024 elections were already being labeled quite widely as potentially the first deepfake election. And we saw immediate real-world evidence of why that label stuck right early in the year.
We really did. I think the most blatant and consequential example of AI misuse specifically for voter suppression was back in January 2024, just ahead of the New Hampshire primary.
Right, the robocall.
The robocall, yeah. Voters received this call using a startlingly convincing AI-cloned voice of President Joe Biden. The message falsely urged registered Democrats not to vote in the primary and to, quote, save your vote for November.
And this wasn't just some simple edited audio clip, right? This was sophisticated deepfake audio designed to sound exactly like him.
Extremely convincing.
Mhm.
And delivered via a mechanism, the robocall, that completely bypasses traditional media filters. It goes directly to the voter's phone. The goal was clearly suppression, confusion, sowing distrust just before a key vote.
And the response, was there one?
Well, thankfully, yes. It did prompt a swift regulatory response. Federal authorities, specifically the FCC, moved pretty quickly to explicitly ban the use of AI voice spoofing in political robocalls.
Okay, so that's something.
It is. It shows regulators can react rapidly when the threat is clear and unambiguous. But, they're often playing defense, reacting to new deployment methods after they happen.
Right. Beyond that kind of outright audio fraud, we've also seen official campaigns starting to play, fast and loose with reality by using AI-generated images themselves in their ads.
Yeah, that's a more subtle line being crossed. There was a notable 2023 political ad, for instance, that depicted this really apocalyptic what-if future using purely AI-generated images of, like, a destroyed America if the other side won.
Even if they disclose it somewhere in the fine print, saying image simulated or something.
Exactly. Even when these images are technically disclosed as synthetic, the very act of using them in a persuasive campaign context still blurs the lines for the average viewer. It conditions the viewer to accept the narrative, the feeling, regardless of whether the image depicts anything real.
It erodes the integrity of visual evidence in politics generally.
That's the subtle but profound effect. It makes voters less trusting of all visual evidence used in political discourse, even if the image is completely genuine. It just feeds the cynicism.
And while the U.S. might feel like it's just beginning its real deepfake journey in elections, other major democracies have been grappling with this threat for years already. India comes to mind immediately.
Yes, India, with its enormous population linguistic diversity, it saw one of the first really overt uses of deepfakes in campaigning way back in the 2020 Delhi elections.
And this case is fascinating because it wasn't about suppression, but about micro-targeting, right?
Precisely. It's a fantastic illustration of the power of AI for hyper-specific targeting. The ruling BJP party created deepfake videos of a politician named Manoj Tiwari. Now, Tiwari naturally speaks Hindi, but the AI made him appear to be speaking fluently in languages or dialects he doesn't actually know, specifically the Haryanvi dialect in one key example.
So he appeared to be speaking directly to that linguistic community in their own dialect.
Exactly, urging them to vote for his party, a message he never actually recorded himself in that language.
And the scale of distribution here is what really makes this a potential blueprint for future campaigns, isn't it? It wasn't just on TV.
No, not at all. These micro-targeted videos weren't broadcast widely. They were strategically distributed across roughly 5,800 WhatsApp groups,
Wow, 5,800 groups.
reaching an estimated 15 million people directly on their phones in closed groups.
That's incredible reach.
It was a potential game changer for political outreach. Suddenly, campaigns could scale their linguistic and ethnic outreach like never before, tailoring messages right down to local dialects and cultural nuances.
But that incident also showed the immediate danger of that liar's dividend concept we mentioned earlier, didn't it?
It really did, in practice. Later on, completely unrelated, an authentic audio leak surfaced where an opposition regional leader was caught accusing his own party of corruption. It sounded really bad for him.
In his response.
He immediately dismissed the damning audio clip as an AI fabrication. He weaponized the public's awareness of deepfakes awareness,
Yeah.
partly generated by things like the Tiwari videos, to try and evade accountability for something that forensic analysis later suggested was entirely real.
So the mere existence of the tech gave him plausible deniability, even for genuine evidence. That conceptual leap from the technology existing to it becoming a political strategy is what we really need to focus on. But first, let's maybe move south to Brazil. Because Brazil has become a major testing ground, it seems, for both deep fake tactics and some really aggressive countermeasures in their judicial system.
Brazil's a fascinating case study. The 2022 presidential race there saw a particularly shocking incident. It involved a very familiar, very trusted face on national television.
Okay.
A deepfake video started spreading rapidly across YouTube and WhatsApp. It showed a really well-known TD news anchor, Renata Vasconcelos, reading out completely falsified election poll results.
Oh, wow. Not just some random person, but a trusted anchor.
Exactly. Someone people see every night and inherently trust. And they didn't just create ambiguous numbers, they perfectly flipped the real results to sow maximum confusion. The fake clip showed her announcing that the incumbent president, Jair Bolsonaro, was leading 44% to 32% over Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva.
When the reality was...
The reality was the exact opposite. Lula was actually ahead by that margin, 44% to 32%, according to legitimate polls at the time. The video was intentionally timed to launch precisely as the official campaign period kicked off, maximizing its impact.
And how good was the fake?
Terrifyingly good, according to reports. The anchor's voice, her appearance, her mannerisms were almost perfectly recreated. This lent it enormous, immediate credibility to people who saw it. It fueled massive confusion, generated all sorts of conspiracy theories online, and it actually forced an investigation by the electoral authorities themselves.
And that incident, I assume, led to Brazil taking a harder line.
It absolutely did. It convinced Brazilian authorities that just passively monitoring wasn't enough. It really set the stage for much stricter rules going into the 2024 elections.
Okay, so they put stricter rules in place for 2024. What was the outcome? Did these aggressive regulations actually stop the use of deepfakes in the municipal elections that year?
Well, they certainly show the persistence of the threat. Despite a pretty clear ban on most AI-generated election content, monitoring during those 2024 municipal elections found at least 78 distinct instances of deepfakes targeting local candidates.
78, just in local elections, even with a ban.
78 deliberate attempts at manipulation, even under the explicit threat of sanction from the electoral courts. It shows how determined bad actors are to use these tools.
78 instances in local races across just a few months. What kind of malicious categories were these fakes falling into? What were they trying to do?
About 80% fell into predictable, destabilizing categories. You had straightforward hoaxes, completely false corruption claims against candidates, fake news reports designed to look real, and crucially, phony announcements designed to mislead voters about the electoral process itself. Things like announcing fake changes to voting dates or polling locations.
Classic voter suppression tactics, supercharged by AI.
Exactly. And depressingly, we saw the most insidious form of harassment rear its head again. AI-generated pornographic hoaxes aimed specifically at women candidates.
There it is again, that direct connection between technological manipulation and the deliberate erosion of equal representation. Trying to drive female politicians out of the public sphere through targeted vile abuse, that feels like a profound threat to democratic health itself.
It absolutely is. But Brazil's response was arguably the most aggressive we've seen globally. Their superior electoral court actually attempted to void the candidacy of politicians who were proven to be behind harmful deepfakes.
Void their candidacy, like kick them out of the race.
Yes, showing an unprecedented intent to use the full weight of the law to rein in this activity and set a really strong deterrent expectation for candidates about what is and isn't acceptable. Whether that holds up legally long-term is another question, but the intent was clear.
And this threat, obviously, is far from confined to just the Americas or large Asian democracies like India. We've seen deepfakes deployed in tense European races and even in active conflict zones.
Absolutely. Consider Slovakia in 2023. Just days before a very tight parliamentary election, a deep fake audio clip started circulating on Facebook. It purported to catch the progressive Slovakia party leader, Michal Jumecha, plotting to rig the election, and this was the bit designed to hit hard planning to raise alcohol prices.
Ah, inflammatory content designed to immediately hit a specific kind of relatable point of resentment among certain voters. Very targeted.
Precisely. Deliberately inflammatory, perfectly timed. Now, even though the platform and fact-checkers quickly exposed it as AI-generated, it racked up shares and views rapidly. It prompted widespread discussion among voters who may never have seen the debunking, potentially affecting voter perceptions just enough in a race where only a few percentage points mattered.
And we saw a similar strategy using audio in an African democracy, too.
Yes, in Nigeria, also in 2023, an AI-manipulated audio clip spread online that falsely implicated a leading presidential candidate in plans to actually falsify ballots. This directly played into existing very deep-seated fears about electoral integrity in what was already a tense environment.
So it becomes immediately believable to skeptical voters because it confirms their existing biases or fears.
Exactly. This is how deepfakes accelerate polarization. They provide seemingly concrete, false evidence for existing suspicions, making constructive dialogue impossible.
And we absolutely can't overlook the use of this technology in active warfare. That feels like the ultimate form of political manipulation.
No, we can't. In March 2022, just weeks after Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, hackers released this crudely edited deepfake video. It showed President Volodymyr Zelensky seemingly announcing a surrender, complete with instructions for Ukrainian soldiers to lay down their arms.
And they planted it somewhere prominent.
They planted it on a hacked Ukrainian news website to give it a veneer of legitimacy.
That was really the first known use of deepfakes in active warfare propaganda, wasn't it? Intended purely to demoralize the population and the military command structure at a critical moment.
It was. Now, thankfully, it was quickly debunked, partly because the technology used was still relatively crude at that specific time, and Zelensky himself responded very fast. But the incident demonstrated the future blueprint. It showed exactly how AI-generated falsehoods can be used in hybrid warfare to try and manipulate the narrative of war, undermine morale, and sow chaos.
So all these cases, from voter suppression in the U.S. to linguistic micro-targeting in India, flipping polls in Brazil, character assassination in Slovakia, Nigeria, and wartime propaganda in Ukraine, they all underscore one crucial finding, don't they? The systemic threat these examples represent goes way beyond just individual hoaxes or scams.
Absolutely. It points to something much deeper.
So let's step back now and look at that bigger picture. Beyond the fake Biden call, the fake Brazilian poll, the Zelensky video, the core problem seems to be this accelerating erosion of trust in all media, in anything we see or hear. That widespread cynicism leads us right back to that dangerous concept you alluded to earlier, the liar's dividend.
This really is the central systemic threat to accountability in the digital age. The term, as you mentioned, was coined by legal scholars Bobby Chesney and Danielle Citron, and it describes this perverse, almost unavoidable benefit that is reaped by wrongdoers.
How does it work exactly?
Well, Once the public becomes widely aware that convincing fakes exist, which we definitely are now, a savvy, dishonest person, say a politician caught in a scandal, can falsely claim that any genuine incriminating evidence against them is actually just a deep fake.
So the dishonest benefit from the general paranoia about deepfakes. Essentially, the mere specter of this technology gives the corrupt an immediate built-in escape clause, plausible deniability for actual verifiable misconduct.
That's it precisely. And we are already seeing this strategy deployed everywhere, successfully muddying the waters and confusing the public. We mentioned the Indian politician who dismissed genuine corruption audio as an AI fabrication earlier. But internationally, we've seen a former Spanish minister claim incriminating photos central to a major scandal were simply fake. A U.S. mayor accused of making racist remarks insisted that leaked audio was engineered and not real, even after forensic experts confirmed its authenticity. It's becoming a go-to defense.
It's becoming a standard political playbook strategy now. And what makes it so damn effective is the psychological component, isn't it? We have this profound information paradox.
Yes.
The more we warn people about deepfakes, the more skeptical they rightly become. But that very skepticism can then be leveraged by bad actors to make people disbelieve real media. There was one study that found politicians' false denials actually become more believable as the public grows more familiar with deepfake technology itself.
It's deeply counterintuitive, but yes.
Right.
That familiarity provides the wrongdoer cover.
Yeah.
We saw this possibility gain global attention after that chilling hypothetical was raised. What if Donald Trump, back in 2016, when confronted with the authentic Access Hollywood tape, had simply dismissed it as a deepfake?
Right. That tape was absolutely genuine, everyone agreed at the time. But in a 2024 or 2028 election cycle, could a candidate try exactly that defense?
And reports actually suggested he did consider this route later, reportedly suggesting in private by 2017 that maybe the tape wasn't real after all. The clear implication is that in future election cycles, any candidate caught in a genuine scandal, whether it's leaked audio, compromising video, incriminating photos, might immediately and perhaps effectively just cry fake.
And muddy the waters enough to survive the news cycle, maybe even evade judicial inquiry.
Potentially, yes. And the judicial system is certainly starting to grapple with this reality already. Courts rely heavily on video and audio evidence. We've seen lawyers for a January 6th riot defendant, for example, argue in court that the prosecutor's video evidence could be a deep fake, urging jurors not to trust their own eyes.
Seriously, in a federal trial?
Yes. And attorneys for Elon Musk, in a completely unrelated corporate case, similarly argue that videos of his past public statements might be inadmissible because they could theoretically be deepfakes.
Right.
The entire chain of evidence, the bedrock of the legal system, is being fundamentally questioned by the very possibility of this technology.
This erosion of just like a common factual ground, it must have severe long-term psychological consequences for democracy itself. It's not just about one rigged election here or there. It's about the underlying architecture of trust breaking down.
Absolutely. One potential fallout is what some analysts call truth decay and the apathy that follows. If you have constant uncertainty about what is real and what is manufactured, some citizens might just conclude it's fundamentally impossible to know the truth about anything complex.
So they just give up.
They might feel all information is tainted, throw up their hands, and simply disengage from civic life. That leads to mass apathy, which completely undermines the informed citizenry that democracy absolutely requires to function.
But conversely, we also see the other extreme reaction, don't we? Deeper polarization and the acceleration of conspiracy thinking.
Yes, that's the other side of the coin. When mainstream evidence can be so easily dismissed as fake, many people simply double down on their existing partisan beliefs. They choose to believe whatever aligns with their political tribe, regardless of evidence.
Like the Brazil example.
Exactly. We saw this illustrated perfectly during that Brazil deepfake poll incident. Some hardline supporter groups absolutely refused to believe the fake poll was fake. They spun elaborate conspiracy theories that it was actually a sophisticated plot by opponents to discredit their preferred candidate by releasing a fake poll.
Wow, layers upon layers of conspiracy.
It just makes it easier for people to live in completely separate, evidence-proof realities, making any kind of national consensus impossible.
And we really must dedicate a moment here to reiterate the chilling effect this has on political participation, especially for certain groups. The ease of creating fake, compromising media targets politicians, journalists, activists, but the impact is disproportionately focused on women, isn't it?
Overwhelmingly. We know that a very large share of election-related deepfakes are these vile pornographic videos targeting female candidates. It's a vicious form of targeted harassment aimed quite deliberately at driving women out of politics entirely.
It's a direct attack on equal representation.
It is. I mean, why would a promising young woman want to enter public life if she knows that a hyper-realistic, sexually explicit video of her could be created and distributed in encrypted channels overnight by a political opponent or just some anonymous troll? The OECD's overall warning here is really stark. They concluded that the spread of mis and disinformation undermines trust in institutions and elections, fuels societal divisions, and threatens the very fabric of democracy. If we can't agree on basic facts, constructive debate just breaks down completely.
Okay, so we have this massive, multifaceted systemic threat. But the world isn't just sitting back, right? People are actively fighting back. Let's look at the three main fronts you mentioned: legal regulation, technological detection and authentication, and public resilience or media literacy. Starting with the legal and regulatory fronts, it seems the EU has definitely taken the lead globally here.
They really have. The EU Artificial Intelligence Act is the first comprehensive binding AI regulation anywhere in the world. It represents a colossal policy effort. And crucially for our topic today, it mandates clear and distinguishable labeling for AI-generated realistic media, specifically what they call deepfake content, that resembles real people, objects, places, or events, and could be mistaken for authentic.
So transparency is key.
Transparency is the core principle. The aim is to manage the risk inherent in these powerful, general-purpose AI models.
And these requirements are technical and serious, right? Not just like a tiny text disclaimer hidden somewhere.
That's the intention. The Act suggests that the providers of the foundational AI models themselves, the companies building these systems, may even be required to embed invisible markers or watermark their outputs in the metadata, specifically so automated systems can read it and flag it as AI generated.
Okay, so building detection right into the source code almost.
Something like that.
Yeah.
It sets a really serious global benchmark. Even if the full enforcement won't really kick in until 2026 or later, it signals the direction of travel.
Right. Now, across the Atlantic, the U.S. approach seems much more fragmented, relying heavily on individual state action for now, which creates kind of a patchwork of different rules across the country.
That's a good description, yeah. Patchwork. We see some early movers, states like California and Texas, which brought in laws barring malicious deepfakes, specifically targeting political candidates within, say, 60 days of an election. And they also require clear disclaimers on AI-generated political ads. New York also recently made disclosure mandatory.
That 60-day window seems important. Is the idea to prevent those last-minute character assassinations where there's literally no time for the victim to debunk the claim before Election Day?
Exactly. It tries to create a buffer zone. Federally, there is momentum building, though. There are proposed bills like the Protect Elections from Deceptive AI Act, which would explicitly outlaw bogus media aimed at deceiving voters about election procedures or candidate stances. And another called the Deepfakes Accountability Act, which aims to mandate clear labeling and watermarking standards nationally. But these are still bills, not yet law.
And beyond the political deception angle, regulation is also strongly focused on the privacy harms, especially that issue of non-consensual sexual imagery we keep coming back to.
Yes, that's a major focus in China, the UK, and the US, thankfully. The UK's Online Safety Act, for example, requires online platforms to proactively remove deepfake porn. In the US, the federal Take It Down Act, which did pass, made it a federal crime to create or distribute non-consensual AI sexual imagery.
And it puts pressure on platforms, too.
Crucially, yes. It mandates that platforms remove such content within 48 hours of notice. This shifts the liability significantly onto the platforms hosting the content and, of course, the individuals creating and sharing it.
Now, speaking of aggressive governance, maybe we should briefly touch on China's deep synthesis rules, because they represent a kind of regulatory extreme, perhaps.
They certainly do. China implemented these really strict rules back in January 2023. They require all AI-generated content, what they call deep synthesis, to be clearly labeled, and they outright ban the use of deepfakes to spread fake news or harm national security or, quote, national honor.
It's a much broader scope.
Much broader. Now, while China's primary motives often clearly involve asserting state control and censorship, allowing them to regulate what kind of synthesized content is even allowed to exist, their policies do demonstrate a model of very aggressive, centralized regulation. It's a model that Western democracies are still struggling to balance with their constitutional free speech protections. It's a different approach.
Okay, That brings us neatly to the second front, the technological arms race. This is where things get really fascinating, but also maybe slightly depressing. Researchers are trying desperately to detect these fakes, but it seems like a constant uphill battle.
It is the absolute definition of a cat and mouse game. And right now, honestly, the mouse seems to be winning, or at least keeping pace. Organizations like DARPA in the US have invested heavily in detection algorithms. Initially, they looked for telltale artifacts, things like inconsistent lighting between a pasted face in the background, weird pixel anomalies, unnatural facial blinks, or lack thereof in early deepfakes.
But the technology itself is adversarial, right? Meaning the AI models creating the fakes learn from the detectors and get better at hiding those artifacts.
That is the core challenge. The newest generation of AI models are specifically trained against those known detection artifacts. They learn to avoid them. The really sobering finding from recent analyses is that even state-of-the-art detectors are struggling significantly against these new generation tools.
How badly are they struggling?
One analysis found they correctly identify sophisticated, new deepfakes only about 65% of the time.
65%. That's barely better than a coin flip.
Exactly. That accuracy rate is fundamentally unreliable for high-stakes decisions, like in a courtroom or trying to verify election claims. The creation technology is constantly, rapidly outpacing the detection technology. It's a lagging indicator.
Okay, this raises a really important strategic question then. If we can't reliably detect every single fake, especially the really good ones, is it more pragmatic to shift the focus? Maybe try to prove what's real instead?
That is precisely the consensus that seems to be forming among many leading researchers and tech companies. If catching all the fakes is potentially impossible, maybe authenticating the genuine article is more achievable. Many analysts are shifting focus towards authentication rather than just detection.
And this is where things like the C2PA come in, the Coalition for Content Provenance and Authentication.
Exactly. C2PA is a major initiative involving companies like Adobe, Microsoft, Intel, BBC, and others.
So how does C2PA work in practice? Because this idea of content credentials sounds a bit like a simple watermark, but I gather it's far more technical and secure than that.
It is, much more. C2PA's goal is to cryptographically sign authentic media right at the point of creation or capture. Using secure metadata, which they call content credentials, think of it as a secure digital fingerprint or a tamper-evident seal. Apply the moment an image or video is captured by an authenticated device, like a specific camera model running compliant software or created by a verified platform.
And this signature uses cryptography.
Yes, it uses cryptographic hashing and digital signatures. It essentially locks the content's integrity at that moment.
Okay, so the content itself then carries this invisible, verifiable digital chain of custody. If that media is altered later, even if it's just slightly cropped or resized or manipulated by AI, what happens?
The digital signature either breaks entirely or changes in a way that indicates tampering. Software designed to read these credentials can instantly tell the viewer or the platform that the provenance is suspect, that the content isn't in its original verified state.
Got it. So it shifts the burden of proof, like you said, instead of requiring forensic examiners to hunt for tiny, almost invisible inconsistencies in a suspected fake.
The consumer or the platform simply checks the digital signature. If it's valid and untampered, you have a high degree of confidence it's authentic. If it's missing or broken, you treat it with extreme caution. Adobe's Content Authenticity Initiative is one of the big drivers here, really pushing to establish this as a global standard for digital trustworthiness.
And we're also seeing AI itself being used to fight back through more advanced forms of watermarking.
Yes, that's another promising avenue. AI models like Google's Synthety, for example, are experimenting with embedding hidden, imperceptible patterns directly into the images or audio generated by AI.
Imperceptible how?
These patterns are embedded in the sort of latent space of the image data. They're designed to be robust, meaning they survive common alterations like cropping, compression, filtering, resizing. But they are detectable by specialized software, which can then confirm with high probability that the image was synthesized by a participating AI model, not captured organically by a camera.
Okay, that sounds useful. Provided, of course, that malicious actors actually use the compliant watermark tools, which seems like a pretty big vulnerability, doesn't it? They could just use open source models without watermarks.
That is the key limitation, yes. Compliance is likely to be voluntary for many tools.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the third and perhaps ultimately the most fundamental pillar of defense. It has to rely on people, on us.
Right. No technical filter, no magic algorithm is going to catch every single fake, especially as they get better. We need citizen resilience, widespread media literacy.
This is absolutely the non-negotiable long-term solution. We need to build a pervasive culture of maybe not distrust, but healthy skepticism. Don't trust automatically, verify first mindset. There are nonprofits like Witness doing great work globally, training journalists, human rights activists, and fact-checkers on authentication methods, how to spot potential fakes, and crucially, how to respond systematically to deepfake-driven doubt when genuine media is challenged.
The key here, though, feels like balancing that necessary skepticism with maintaining some level of functional trust. We need to engender that healthy skepticism reflex, but we can't tip entire populations into total cynicism where they believe nothing, because that just feeds the truth decay and apathy we discussed earlier.
That's the tightrope walk. The goal has to be a discerning public that neither naively accepts every viral media clip at face value, nor automatically dismisses real evidence of wrongdoing just because someone shouts deepfake. Transparency becomes absolutely crucial here. Authorities, media organizations, platforms, they need to be much more open about their verification methods, show their work, and admit when they're unsure about a piece of content.
And finally, on the resilience front, it feels like democracies worldwide are treating this year, 2024, and maybe 2025, as a real trial by fire, a stress test.
They absolutely are. Countries with major elections like India and Indonesia recently issued specific warnings about AI manipulation and set up quick response debunking teams within their electoral commissions. And remember, Brazil's stringent rules empowering judges to actually sanction violators. That sets clear expectations for how campaigns simply must behave in this new environment under the constant threat of synthesized deception.
So this multifaceted response, legal, technical, educational, is clearly still evolving, still trying to catch up. Let's shift our focus now towards the end here and look forward. What are the trends we should expect in the next few years? Where is this heading?
Well, the primary trend is pretty simple and maybe a bit daunting. Increased sophistication and increased accessibility. Generative AI is just advancing so incredibly rapidly. By some credible estimates, within just a couple of years, the average person may truly struggle to distinguish high-quality AI fakery from reality without access to specialized forensic tools or these authentication credentials we talked about.
And the democratization aspect you mentioned earlier, that continues.
Oh, absolutely. The democratization of the technology means that what required significant technical savvy and expensive computing power back in, say, 2019 might soon be doable with a basic smartphone app by 2025 or 2026.
Which means basically anyone with a grudge or a political motive or even just a modest budget could potentially produce a convincing fake targeted at an individual, a company, or an institution.
That widespread capability leads to two major emerging frontiers we need to watch very closely. First, audio deepfakes, like that Biden robocall example. They are a huge problem because audio can be easier to perfect than video, fewer variables to get right, and it's often consumed more passively without the visual cues that might sometimes give away a video fake.
And we're already seeing scams using this, right?
Definitely. We're already seeing scammers use AI voice clones in real-time phone calls to defraud businesses and families, convincingly impersonating a CEO ordering a wire transfer or a relative claiming they're in trouble and need money urgently. It exploits trust in a very direct way.
Okay, so audio is one frontier. What's second?
The second is real-time impersonation. This potentially removes any time window whatsoever for fact-checking or debunking.
Real time, you mean like live fakes?
Exactly. The technology is rapidly enabling real-time deepfakes, where a person's face and voice can be convincingly puppeteered live via a webcam feed. Imagine a scenario where a CEO or a prominent political leader appears on what looks like a live video stream, maybe a press conference or an internal company meeting making some critical mistake or a shocking announcement.
Only for the organization or the person themselves to later discover they were never actually on camera. It was a live puppet.
Precisely. In that situation, immediate verification becomes nearly impossible, the damage to be done instantaneously.
Wow. And finally, looking ahead, we should probably expect that hyper-targeted disinformation to get even more sophisticated, taking the kind of micro-targeting used in India's 2020 campaign to a really sinister new level of bespoke manipulation.
I think that's almost inevitable. Instead of just mass viral videos that might get flagged by platform algorithms, we could see highly bespoke deepfake videos sent to very specific, small, homogenous communities, probably via encrypted messaging apps like WhatsApp or Signal where they're hard to track.
Give me an example.
Okay, imagine a video of a local, trusted religious leader seemingly endorsing a particular candidate, but delivered in a very specific, niche, local dialect. And that video is sent only to, say, a few hundred families within that specific community via a private WhatsApp group.
So it amplifies identity-based manipulation, hitting very specific cultural or religious nerves.
Exactly. And it makes detection by centralized fact-checkers or large platforms nearly impossible, because the content will likely never go viral publicly or even be indexed by search engines like Google. It stays within those closed networks.
Okay, so we have this picture of an ever-escalating arms race. More sophisticated fakes, real-time threats, hyper-targeting. But we also see determined optimism on the technological side, right? People are trying to find solutions that maybe bypass the weaknesses of current detection methods.
Yes, there's definitely ongoing research. People aren't giving up. Researchers are exploring some really novel, subtle techniques. For instance, training AI to analyze minute biological signals in a video.
Biological signals, like,
Yeah.
whoa.
Things like using microscopic analysis of blood flow changes in a subject's face, which subtly alters skin color and relates to heart rate, or analyzing microexpressions. The idea is that these subtle, involuntary physiological signals are currently very difficult for generative AI to replicate accurately and consistently.
Yeah.
It might be a way to distinguish real human footage from synthesized footage.
Interesting. And the big tech companies are committing to watermarking.
Yes, many of the major tech firms involved in C2PA and other initiatives have pledged to implement watermarking or content credential systems on the outputs of their main AI models by 2025. If this is adopted widely, and if tools are developed to easily read these credentials, it could provide reliable filters for conscientious consumers and platforms to distinguish authentic from generated content, at least from the major players.
And policy, presumably, will have to adapt just as quickly to keep pace with these hyper-targeted threats and real-time scams.
It absolutely has to. We should probably expect regulators to continue tightening requirements on social media companies, perhaps moving from mostly voluntary compliance on things like labeling towards more mandatory reporting and faster takedowns, and probably accelerating the legal penalties for really egregious election-related deepfakery.
Is there any push for global coordination?
There is some talk, yes. Some analysts and policymakers are pushing for a stronger global normative stance, likening state-sponsored or state-condoned deepfake campaigns to a form of prohibited information warfare. Perhaps something like a digital Geneva Convention for truth in media, trying to stigmatize the use of these tools by governments in a way that undermines global stability and trust. But that's a long road.
Okay, let's try and bring this all together as we wrap up. Maybe think about two potential scenarios for you, the listener, to consider. The best case and the worst case for how society ultimately adapts or fails to adapt to this crisis of truth.
Okay, well, in the best case scenario, society adapts. It learns. Much like, we eventually adapted to the existence of Photoshop and digital photo manipulation decades ago. It took time, but we developed a general awareness.
So what would that look like in this context?
Universal media literacy becomes much stronger. It triggers a kind of healthy skepticism reflex, as we called it, especially against media that lacks verifiable provenance or credentials. Trusted institutions, professional journalism, rigorous fact-checking organizations, they might actually regain their crucial importance as validators in a sea of potential fakes.
And campaigns might change their behavior, too.
Potentially. Campaigns might adopt preemptive strategies, like digitally signing and publicly archiving all their official media releases using C2PA standards, making any subsequent fakes easier to spot and debunk rapidly. We essentially develop a stronger societal and digital immune system against this specific kind of manipulation.
Okay, that's the optimistic path. But the worst case is truly chilling, isn't it? It leads us right back to that liar's dividend concept, but in its ultimate, most corrosive form.
The worst case is, frankly, that fact-based discourse just collapses entirely.
Yeah.
Ubiquitous, virtually undetectable deepfakes become so common that they lead to completely entrenched information silos. No shared facts exist between different political or social groups.
And the liar's dividend becomes...
It becomes the universal escape clause, not just for politicians, but for corrupt officials, for criminals, for anyone caught doing wrong anywhere in the world. They can always claim it's AI or it's a deepfake to dismiss genuine, verifiable evidence against them. Accountability essentially vanishes.
And democratic institutions can't survive that.
It's hard to see how they could. Democratic institutions cannot survive a complete collapse of shared reality, a world where objective truth becomes purely subjective or tribal. It accelerates democratic backsliding and fundamentally erodes the rule of law.
So that really summarizes the consensus well, I think. The challenge is profound, it's serious, but maybe it is not insurmountable if we act quickly, comprehensively, and collaboratively.
That seems right. Combating AI-enabled disinformation requires that hybrid approach we discussed. You need the technology, aggressive regulation, cutting-edge authentication tools. But you also need the human element, critical thinking, media literacy, strong journalistic ethics. And all of this has to be done while carefully balancing the need for protection with fundamental rights like free expression. It's a difficult balancing act.
And awareness, like we're trying to foster here today, is surely the crucial first step. We've seen those surveys showing deep public concern. That concern is the engine that can drive resilience, demanding better tools, better laws, better education.
Absolutely. We have to fortify our information ecosystems and maybe even double down on the fundamental values of truth and accountability if we hope to maintain informed, functioning democracies in the face of this technology.
The struggle we've detailed today really feels like a race between those who seek to distort truth for power or profit, and those who are striving to uphold truth as a vital public good. So, here's a final provocative thought for you to take away. Given that even genuine compromising evidence video audio can now potentially be dismissed just by shouting deepfake, what other essential mechanisms of accountability must democracies urgently prioritize and strengthen?
Beyond video.
Yeah, aside from video or audio evidence, things like financial records, forensic accounting, whistleblower protections, independent judicial processes, maybe even just traditional witness testimony. What needs shoring up to ensure that leaders can still be held responsible for actual misconduct, even in a world saturated with potential fakery? It forces us, as one report put it, to grapple with the uncertain future of truth.
That is a fascinating and absolutely critical question for every citizen, every institution to be considering right now.
We encourage you to continue exploring the sources we've drawn on today if you want to learn more. Thank you for joining us for the deep dive.